I've been having these weird thoughts lately about the future of open source, AI development, vibe coding, whatever you want to call it, and where AI really fits into all of this, because personally, I'm not a fan of AI development. I don't use it myself. I do use AI for some things, like generating the subtitles for my videos, which I then go and manually edit. And I know a lot of people in the Linux part of the FOSS space don't really like AI. There's like a bit of a mix of it, but mainly leaning in that direction. However, I've spoken to a lot of developers who are just graduating high school, who are in their early 20s. I know people in education who work at game development schools and things like that. And in all of these cases, I'm seeing pretty much the exact same thing. It is the norm, not every single person, but a majority of people are using AI in some form of their development, in some form of their development education, and it's just a core part of what they do. Now, different extents to different people. Obviously, you have the ones who are heavily relying on it in more of a sort of vibe codey way, where they don't really understand the code. They're not a developer, they're not an engineer, they are just spewing out code, and it roughly approximates software. Then you have other people who have a strong software engineering, computer science background, who are using these tools as a way to sort of augment their development and produce more code than they otherwise would be able to do by just working by themselves. In some cases, allowing them to make projects that may have taken 3 months in just a single month. Now, the specific thing that inspired this video is this Reddit post, posted 5 days ago. I built a native Logitech Options Plus clone for Linux. This was temporarily removed from the subreddit, but is now back with an edit on the use of Claude and AI. In hindsight, I should have been upfront about the AI use in the original post. That's on me. Now, with that out of the way, to answer a question a lot of you have been asking, is this vibe coded? Short answer, no. Long answer, there is no amount of prompting that you can make to produce something extensible and modular if you don't know what you are doing. So I guess the only proof one would need is to go through the code, judge the architecture, and maybe add something. And it's absolutely no secret that Claude was used in the code. It might not be mentioned in the original post, but Claude is one of the major contributors of the 3 contributors. I'm not trying to single out this one developer. This is something I am seeing very frequently. I go to r/Linux and I see people posting these new apps. It might be something like this. It might be some like, I don't know, resource management tool, something that displays your disk usage or a file manager, things like that. And basically everyone that I've seen made, in the past year, 2 years, every single one of them has had some use of AI. Some are entirely vibe coded, and the person who released it has no idea what it's doing. Others are cases like this, where at least the person is claiming that they are using as a way to augment their development. But the point I'm making is a lot of new developers in the open source space are using AI tooling. And it would be one thing if it was all just garbage and nobody wanted to use it, but in cases like this, whilst this is still early and it only supports a single mouse, when this supports more mice, this will be a really useful piece of software, and I think it's super cool. But at the same time, I feel kind of conflicted about whether or not to promote the software. Because I want to promote things that are useful, but at the same time, I want to highlight things that people actually made, software that they built themselves. You might say artisan developers if you want to use that terminology. But outside of the Linux desktops and a few other large-scale projects in the Linux open source world, in the general open source world, the usage of this tooling is becoming more and more accepted. Yes, you are still seeing people say, oh, you shouldn't use this is bad, don't use it. But from my perception, from what I've seen, it's not like in the art space where there is a lot of people who really don't like this, and if you ever mention or even hint, or not even hint, maybe it looks kind of like AI, there will be a witch hunt against you, and people try to dox you and ruin your life. In the open source space, though, people are just kind of using the tools. They're getting promoted, and some people complain, but that's basically the end of it. So more and more people are starting to use these tools. More and more people are joining this space that were never developers before. And this is something which I hope long-term doesn't begin to cause some sort of problem. So there are projects like the Linux kernel, even though this is being reported like 2 days ago. This actually happened about 3 months ago. I think I made a video on it when it happened 3 months ago. The Linux kernel has a set of guidelines on how to use AI and how to report that you're using AI, pretty much just saying, hey, I used AI with this patch, here's the tool I used, and you're pretty much just saying, I take responsibility for whatever the AI generated. It's not really like a strict policy, more of just a, if you're going to use this, you need to be responsible for the code. It is just a natural extension of their existing developer certificate of origin. Then there are other projects like NetBSD, which pretty much just say, don't use it, because they argue that this is tainted code, this could have GPL code in it, and become really messy with the licenses they are using, which I think is a reasonable stance to be taking. And then you have other projects, like, I know I talked about Linux desktops, but KDE doesn't actually have a clear stance on whether or not you can use this tooling. They do have something for their Google Summer of Code members. Basically, if you're going to apply for it, don't generate your proposal with AI. It's okay if English isn't your main language. It's much better to have someone that we can actually talk to rather than trying to talk to a machine. And this is more of a logistical thing than a true stance on AI. This is just 3 examples, but if you see amongst the general community, there is this consensus shifting towards don't use AI code in any of your open source projects. And I understand that concern. My concern, though, is what happens when the current young developers who are, in their early 20s are now the old beards, and the new young developers are people that were born after AI became a thing that was available. Like how, most people now grew up around the internet. There's going to be a whole generation of people who grew up as a developer having access to AI tools from the very day they begin writing code, where it becomes a very standard thing that you adopt this into your workflow, that you use this and augment the learning you're doing with this tooling, who in some cases may not even see the value in learning how to code without having access to these tools. What does that mean for the projects that outright ban AI code? And especially so when there comes a point where it becomes effectively indiscernible what is AI code and what is just like a poor or average developer, or possibly even competent. What happens when it looks like you're dealing with real code from a real person, from a system that might be replying to you, that understands the code? What do you do if you say no AI? And is there going to be enough developers at that point to really keep a project alive? Or is it going to be the case where it's just the graybeards working on it, there's a few young developers that get involved, but not enough to really revitalize the project? At the same time, if you allow the use of these tools, and this is a problem that NetBSD has, what does that ultimately mean for these software licenses? Because these were built around the fact that people own the code that they produce. Things are being written by people that have copyright and all this good stuff. Nothing has been fully settled in regards to whether or not AI code is copyrightable or not. But specifically in the US, it is leaning towards the fact that AI code is not copyrightable. So what does that mean for a project that is primarily written with AI? Does a software license even apply to that code base, or is that code now effectively in the public domain? And yeah, the problem of license mixing, like accidentally bringing copyleft code into a project that shouldn't be copylefted, that's a big deal. And using AI to strip the license off of a project and using the AI to like rewrite the code into a, more permissive license, these are problems. But I think the core foundational problem is whether or not code licenses even function if the code was written with AI. I would love to answer that question and give you a clear indication of how this is going to go. I don't know. This is something which is yet to be legally challenged, and different projects are just making different assumptions about this. Projects which are accepting AI code are just accepting the fact that, yeah, if I put the code in the license, then it's gonna have the license that applies to it. Other people, though, are saying, well, we have the problem of license mixing, so even that problem, just at that point, everything goes out the window. Then other people are saying, well, I actually don't like copyright to begin with, so maybe this is a good thing. Maybe if everything just, explodes and licenses just break, now everything can just be in the public domain. None of these people are wrong. All of this is still entirely, legal gray area, and until someone takes a project to court and has a judge decide on what this all means, the entire open source space is basically now in a weird, who knows whether things even work area. Then there is a completely different question about AI use during code review. So this recently came up when I talked about this merge request in systemd, the birthdate field, and somebody noticed, I noticed as well, that Pottering said at Claude review. They are using Claude for doing code review in systemd. And not just systemd, this is a really common thing you see, even amongst some projects which don't necessarily like the use of AI development. AI code review is sort of treated as this whole other thing, not as a way to replace human code review, but as a way to sort of check anything at the end that the developers might have missed. Then, a little bit different, focused more on security vulnerabilities, there are things like Project Glasswing, securing critical software for the AI era, which is a collaboration between a bunch of big companies, all trying to find security vulnerabilities through the use of AI, because the malicious hackers, they're also using AI. At the same time as this, though, you have posts like this one from Daniel Stenberg, Death by 1,000 Slops. This was posted last year, but is basically the creator of curl complaining about being inundated with AI slop security reports that are an absolute mess. And they're being sent to the curl bug bounty program, so much so, it got so bad that they went and shut down the curl bug bounty because it was not worth the effort. But even with Daniel having this stance, he still acknowledges the fact that in certain contexts, when used by certain people who actually have a developer background, these tools can be used in a useful, productive way. Feel free to argue about this in the comments, but I think the important distinction here is consent. Did the maintainers of the project consent to using AI for bug and security reports, for code review, and things like that? In the case of systemd, Pottering explicitly said to Claude, hey, review the code. And this can't just be called by random people, by random developers who have nothing to do with systemd. Like pretty much every other project, it can only be done by certain members, usually like maintainers and things like that. In the case of things like Project Glasswing, these companies are explicitly involved to deal with these problems. They are saying, hey, we want to have AI be involved, finding security reports, and we're going to go and deal with them. They are in control of the flow of information. But when we're dealing with curl, Daniel and the other members of the team were getting just random drive-by contributors thinking they're being helpful, sending in these nonsense security reports, which in many cases they didn't even test. And because of that, now every report effectively has to be treated as suspect. Now you don't know when you're looking at a report if, well, one, it's a real report, two, it's a person who reported it. So if it's not a person and you want some clarifications on things they tried because maybe you have issues actually replicating the problem, you don't even know if you're actually talking to a person and can really identify if this is something that was found. And if it's not a real vulnerability and it's not generated by a person, why is it here? Like, how did it enter into the repo? I think from here, the rest of it is up to you guys, because I don't have an answer to any of this. I'm just sort of rambling and putting my thoughts out there on, like, where this is going. This is a thing where even if you don't want to deal with AI, you don't like AI, it's a problem that you have to think about, because this is something which is going to become more and more important to the life and the future of open source. With that being said, I guess, let me know your thoughts down below. If you liked the video, go like the video, go subscribe as well. Do you use AI? Do you not use AI? Do you know people who are starting development with AI? Maybe you have kids who are learning to write code. I'd love to know. Let me know everything down below. So, if you really liked the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon subscribe Sally Bearer Pay linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and what if this entire time I was AI?